Tonight, I received more than just roses. I also found condoms hidden in the flower box by my husband, Daniel, with a card starkly inscribed to, "This is Day." I was reduced to an absurd supporting character in their affair. That's Day. I left work and headed home. Carrying a bouquet of white roses, the younger women in the office had gathered, buzzing about the holiday. Some showing off necklaces from their husbands, others proudly displaying perfume, their laughter constant. I didn't say much, just offered a faint smile, took my flowers home, and even harbored a small spark of anticipation. Though I had been married for 3 years, our relationship had long lost the fiery passion of our early days. Yet he would occasionally surprise me. Last year, he had given me a fountain pen, saying he hoped it'd write my cases more beautifully. In that moment, I truly had been touched. It was these small gestures that made me cling to the belief that even if he was dull and inarticulate, he at least kept me in his heart. Sure enough, a delicate Valentine's Day gift box lay on the floor in the entryway. Its packaging was a soft, creamy white, adorned with a subtle gold moon pattern, giving it an understated yet luxurious feel. My heart fluttered slightly, and I couldn't help but bend down to pick it up. I even instinctively wondered, was it a necklace or perfume? My fingertips slowly untied the ribbon, and the moment the lid gently lifted, a small card slipped out, landing on the floor. I froze for a second, then casually bent down to retrieve it. But as my gaze fell upon the printed words, my breath caught in my throat. In the center of the card were striking red English letters, flanked by suggestive cartoon images. I hardly needed to think. I recognized what it was at a glance. It was a promotional card for a brand of condoms. I stood frozen, my fingers stiff as if numbed, my fingertips trembling slightly. The last thread of hope in my heart snapped with a pop. Condoms, a Valentine's Day gift box, delivered to our home. If it was a prank, why was it inside the gift box? If it was a merchant's mistake, why would it be something so private and suggestive? A myriad of images flashed through my mind. Him saying he was working late, but actually having dinner with someone. Him stepping out to take a call, his voice hushed, saying "We'll talk tomorrow." Even the faint trace of perfume on his shirt collar last month, which I'd dismiss as imagination. But the reality before me felt like a brutal slap, jolting me awake from my illusions. My breathing grew increasingly rapid. My chest felt crushed by a heavy stone, weighing me down to the point of suffocation. My fingers stiffly picked up my phone, the screen illuminating through the blur of my tears. I dialed Sarah's number. The call connected quickly. Before I could speak, my voice tore out. He sent evidence of his affair to our home. Does he think I'm blind or dead? My voice was choked with sobs, yet seething with fury. Sarah was silent for a moment, as if startled by my outburst. "Grace, calm down. Tell me clearly, what happened?" I took a deep breath, trying to articulate the situation, but each word felt squeezed through my teeth. I just opened a Valentine's Day gift box, and there was a condom card inside. Tell me, isn't this an insult? Or is he trying to remind me that he's had someone else for a long time? By this point, my voice was trembling uncontrollably. I clutched the card in my hand, my knuckles white, almost crumpling the paper. "Grace, don't get so worked up. Maybe the merchant made a mistake," Sarah tentatively suggested. "A mistake?" I sneered, tears suddenly streaming down my face. Condoms in a Valentine's Day gift box, and specifically delivered to me? Is this coincidence or fate? My laughter was grating, as if I were mocking someone else, but even more, mocking myself. 3 years of tolerance, understanding, and constant self-reassurance had all turned into a cruel joke. The other end of the line fell silent. Sarah seemed to realize that the situation was likely far from simple. I leaned back on the sofa, my shoulders shaking slightly, tears splashing onto the back of my hand. Rage churned within me, a fire instantly igniting all the suppressed grievances. The fact that he dared to bring something like this home tells me he doesn't care about me at all. "Sarah, do you know? All I want to do right now is tear his face off, throw this card at him, and demand an explanation." My voice was almost a snarl. From the other end of the phone, Sarah softly advised, "Grace, no matter what, you need to calm down first. You have the evidence, but whether and how to expose him, you need to think it through. Calm down." A bitter laugh escaped me, but no matter how much reason tried to intervene, the anger kept surging. My heart felt as if it were being tightly squeezed, each beat a tearing pain. I stared at the gift box, as if it were a sarcastic joke. Valentine's Day, the tenderest holiday for lovers, yet he had brazenly delivered the proof of his betrayal directly into my hands. I couldn't bear to imagine him lying with someone else. Yet countless details flooded my mind like a tide, driving me to the brink of madness. Anger, humiliation, shame all pressed down on my chest. In that moment, I finally understood some things couldn't just be endured. Some betrayals were an insult, stepping all over you, and I would no longer stay silent. I spent a sleepless night. I stared at the ceiling, my eyes gritty. Feeling completely drained, the photo of the condom card on my phone screen flashed repeatedly, giving me a splitting headache. Daniel had sent a few messages, terse to the extreme. Very late tonight, don't wait up, don't wait, get some rest. I didn't reply. One thought cycled endlessly in my mind. I needed to get to the bottom of this. I needed to hear him explain what he was doing, in person. The next morning, I put on my best-fitting suit dress, meticulously groomed, in the mirror. The dark circles under my eyes were undeniable, but my expression was hard, as if I had donned armor. I told myself that today was not for crying, today was for getting answers. The glass doors of the office building reflected my silhouette, shimmering with cold light, the moment I pushed them open. The familiar receptionist greeted me with a smile. I nodded, my steps unconsciously quickening. Daniel's office was at the very end of the hall, with floor-to-ceiling windows that always let in bright light. I had planned it all out. No matter what excuse he offered, I would throw that card onto his desk and force him to confront it. But just as I was about to reach his office door, a scene around the corner stabbed into my eyes like a knife. Daniel and Chloe were standing in front of him. She wore a fitted light gray shirt, her posture languid, holding a document. I initially thought it was just a regular work discussion, but the next second, she raised her hand, her fingertips subtly adjusting his collar. The gesture was overly intimate, carrying a hint of flirtatious ambiguity, and he didn't pull away. In fact, I distinctly saw a casual smile play on his lips. My breath hitched instantly. In that moment, the entire corridor seemed to empty, all sounds vanish, leaving only the rapid thumping of my own heart in my ears. I stood rigid, my fingers unconsciously clenching, nails digging hard into my palm and, numb with pain. Was I the one who belonged in the shadows? Was I his lawful wife? Nothing to him, while he smiled so naturally in front of others. A wave of humiliation crashed over me, engulfing me from head to toe. Last night's anger hadn't subsided, and now it was compounded by a searing shame, making it difficult to breathe. I desperately looked up, trying to prevent the tears from falling, but the image was etched into my mind like a nail. And the more I tried to avert my gaze, the more my heart felt like it was being ripped open. Grace. It was a colleague's voice. Behind me, those two short words jolted me awake. Chloe and Daniel both turned, their gazes sweeping over me. Chloe's expression quickly smoothed out, a smile still on her lips, but with a hint of triumph. Her hand lingered on Daniel's collar, as if deliberately provoking me. Daniel's face registered a flicker of surprise, then he walked towards me, his voice deliberately lowered. What are you doing here? My throat tightened, all the words I wanted to say stuck. Countless thoughts raced through my mind. Last night's card, this morning's intimacy, his calm expression now, anger, humiliation, embarrassment all exploded in that instant. What am I doing here? My voice was low, almost grinding my teeth. Daniel, why don't you ask whose hand was adjusting your collar? And who signed for your Valentine's Day gift box? The air instantly solidified. Chloe raised an eyebrow, smiling meaningfully, as if she understood nothing, yet everything. Daniel's face changed, and he reached out to pull me. Grace, don't make a scene at the office. Make a scene? I stared at him, my chest heaving, my heart pounding as if struck by a heavy hammer. Last night, I still wanted an explanation, but now I understood clearly he had no intention of explaining. He only feared I would make a scene. In that moment, I realized who the real one in the shadows was. Ironically, it wasn't Chloe, it wasn't Daniel, it was me. I slowly pushed his hand away, the nail marks on my palm deeply imprinted into my skin. My voice was as cold as ice. Don't worry, I won't make a scene at the office, but the answers you owe me, I will get. With that, I turned and walked away, my back ramrod straight, unyielding, but with every step, the sound of my heels striking the floor was a reminder. The humiliation had taken root in my heart. I could no longer deceive myself about this marriage. The cold light of the office corridor and Chloe's provoking smile still pricked at my heart like thorns. I walked out of the company almost in a daze, and when my phone vibrated, I didn't even see who was calling. not until I heard the urgent voice. Ms. Grace, something's happened. Your stock account was liquidated yesterday. It was the company's CFO. I stopped abruptly, feeling as if I'd been struck by lightning, my fingers clenching the phone, my voice stiff. What did you say? Last night, Mr. Daniel logged in using your authorization code and sold all the stocks under your name, totaling over 3.6 million. I just reconciled the accounts, noticed the anomaly, and immediately contacted you to confirm. Boom. It felt like my ears had exploded. 3.6 million, that was my life savings, painstakingly accumulated through years of overtime and late nights, the financial security I dared not touch or spend carelessly. And he, Daniel, had just quietly emptied all my hard-earned money. Why? The answer was almost too obvious to guess. He wasn't supporting me, or this so-called home. He was supporting the woman who stood shamelessly adjusting his collar. The blue light from my phone screen reflected on my face, and in the reflection of the glass door, I saw my own distorted expression, my eyes cold as blades. How dare he? My teeth gnashed, my voice trembling out of control. How dare he use my blood money to support his mistress? The CFO hesitated on the other end of the line. Ms. Grace, should I call the police immediately? Call the police? I scoffed, my chest heaving. The fire in my heart had burned through all reason, leaving only raging fury. No need to call the police. I uttered each word in a low voice. I want him to tell me himself. How dare he touch my money? The moment I hung up, my fingertips were trembling. Back home, I pushed open the door with such force it almost splintered. The house was silent, curtains half drawn, and the light fell grayly across the living room, as if draped in shadow. On the coffee table lay last night's gift box, its ribbon already loose, the card crumpled in my grip. It rested there, quietly, like proof of some cruel joke. Mocking my naivety, the rage in my chest almost suffocated me. Not long after, the lock clicked. Daniel came in, carrying his briefcase, impeccably dressed in his suit, his expression as usual. Seeing me on the sofa, he paused slightly, then smiled. Home so early today? I slowly lifted my eyes, my voice terribly grim. 3.6 million, when were you planning to tell me? He flinched, a flicker of panic in his eyes, but it was quickly masked. Setting down his briefcase, he feigned ignorance. What are you talking about? I abruptly stood up, slamming my phone onto the coffee table, the account statement starkly displayed on the screen. This is what I'm talking about. Last night, you accessed my account and liquidated all my stocks. Grace, let me explain. I cut him off, my voice hoarse yet sharp. Are you going to explain that you used my money to buy Chloe a bag? Or to rent her an apartment? Or for some other shady dealings? His brows furrowed, his face growing darker. Don't go slandering me. Slandering you? I laughed, tears welling up. Daniel, you dared to send evidence of your affair to our home, and now you dare to touch my money. Do you really think I'm dead? Or what? My voice echoed through the living room, like a string stretched taut with fury, ready to snap at any moment. He was pressed by my questions, his face turning ashen, his lips pressed into a thin line, unable to utter a single coherent word. I stared at him, my fingertips white from gripping too hard. 3.6 million, that's my hard-earned money, earned with my blood, sweat, and tears. How dare you touch it? How dare you? My shouts were almost a shriek. For a moment, the air froze, the house terribly silent. Only the pounding of my heart, like a war drum, reverberated in my chest. I suddenly realized this was no longer just marital betrayal. This was a complete trampling of my very being. This was him telling me that, in his eyes, I was not just a tolerant wife, but an ATM to be plundered at will. Humiliation and rage combined into a blazing fire, racing through my veins, making my whole body tremble. I slowly spoke, my voice low but firm. Daniel, from today onwards, every single cent you owe me, I will personally reclaim. In that moment, I was no longer the passive wife, no longer the humiliated other woman. Fury had completely awakened me, burning away all hesitation and illusion. I stared at him, my gaze as cold as a sharp blade. This marriage, I would personally tear it apart. The night air was cool as I hunched on the steps outside the law. Darkness had fallen, and the street lights cast a dim yellow glow, stretching my shadow long. The cigarette in my hand burned down to the filter, its ember flickering, and I watched it, involving the concealment and transfer of marital assets. You absolutely have grounds to pursue legal action. Legal action. The two words echoed in my mind, but I didn't act immediately. Instead, I sat alone on those steps, lighting a second cigarette, then a third. Wisps of white smoke rose before my eyes, blurring my vision, yet tears streamed out uncontrollably, rolling down my cheeks and wetting the back of my hand. I had never been one to cry easily, in all my years as a lawyer. No matter how heartbroken my clients were, I had remained calm, diligently recording evidence and maintaining my composure. But now, it was my own life being trampled. My heart-guarded marriage being betrayed, anger, humiliation, heartbreak. They struck me down again and again, but amidst countless breaths, I suddenly realized, what could crying change? Could enduring bring respect? I remembered Chloe's provoking smile in the office, Daniel's cold "don't make a scene" at the office, and the account statement showing 3.6 million liquidated. It turned out that, in their eyes, I was merely a fool to be manipulated. The scent of smoke still lingered on my fingertips, and I took a deep breath, roughly wiping away my tears. This time, I would not be a victim. This time, I would personally reclaim everything that belonged to me. My phone screen lit up, illuminating my somewhat haggard but resolute face. Under the blue light, my gaze no longer wavered. I took a deep breath and pressed the familiar numbers. Beep beep. Soon, the operator's voice came through. "Hello. This is 911. How may I help you?" I gripped my phone tightly, my voice low but incredibly firm. "I want to report a crime. Chloe is suspected of transferring marital assets." As those words left my mouth, I felt the heavy pressure on my chest suddenly tear open, my heart beating incredibly fast, even aching slightly, but this pain, paradoxically, made me feel alive for the first time. The voice on the other end quickly became serious. "Please remain calm and explain the details of the situation. We will open an investigation." I recounted the story word by word, my tone as cold as if I were stating someone else's case. "Last night, she, in my husband's name, unilaterally cleared 3.6 million in stock funds from my personal account. I have complete transaction records, timestamps, and account statements. All the evidence is in hand." When the word evidence came out of my mouth, my voice suddenly stabilized. Yes, I was not alone and helpless. I had evidence, I had the law, and I had my professional experience. I was no longer the wife who questioned in the living room only to be met with cold sneers. No longer the woman publicly humiliated at the end of a quarter. I held my phone, my shoulders straight, as if I had returned to my rightful place. The call ended, and the night under the streetlights remained desolate. But my mind was clearer than ever before. Once, I believed marriage was a refuge, a source of warmth, but now it had become a cage. Their excuse for wanton plunder, and I, with the law, would dismantle this cage brick by brick. I looked down at the back of my tear-streaked hand and suddenly curved my lips into a cold smile. From today onwards, I would no longer be a pawn in their game. I was the one who would turn the tables. The night wind scattered the last wisp of smoke. I slowly stood up, brushing the dust from my clothes. My heels clicked crisply on the steps, firm and clear. In that moment, I truly awoke. The courtroom air was heavy. Even the ticking of the wall clock sounded clear. I sat in the plaintiff's seat, my hands calmly folded on the table, the black lawyer's robe draped over my shoulders, like a suit of armor, concealing the rise and fall of my chest. 3 months ago, I was the wife collapsing and shouting in the living room. 3 months ago, I was sitting outside the law, smoking and weeping uncontrollably. But today, I would use evidence to strip bare all their hypocrisy and betrayal. Opposite me, in the defendant's seat, Daniel's expression was grim, his eyes darting. Chloe sat beside him, dressed in a plain white blouse, feigning composure, but her hands tightly clutched her skirt. "Plaintiff, please continue to present evidence." As the judge's voice rang out, I slowly stood and presented the final USB drive. My attorney inserted it into the projector, and the screen abruptly lit up. It was hotel surveillance footage. The timestamp was clear, the location precise. In the video, Daniel and Chloe walked side by side into the elevator, looking intimate. Chloe even had her arm linked through his, her smile brazen. Just before the elevator doors closed, he instinctively raised a hand and brushed her back. The courtroom was silent. Every frame on the projection screen was like a sharp knife, piercing through their facade. I took a deep breath, my voice steady yet cold. These video materials were retrieved from the hotel and notarized by a notary public, proving that the two defendants maintained a long-term improper relationship during the marriage. The judge adjusted his glasses, reviewed the materials, then looked up, his voice carrying undeniable weight. This evidence is sufficient to prove marital misconduct. A thud. My heart gave a violent lurch. That moment, I had waited for too long. The liquidation of 3.6 million, countless nights of doubt, all that humiliation and anger, finally culminated in this calm ruling. It was no longer my conjecture, no longer their misunderstanding, but ironclad proof. From the opposite seat, Daniel abruptly stood up, his voice out of control. These videos are faked. She's deliberately framing us. Chloe also panicked, trying to maintain composure but unable to hide her distress. Yes, we were just on a normal business dinner. Silence. The judge's voice fell coldly, and the sound of the gavel striking the table instantly silenced them. I quietly watched their denials, a faint smirk playing on my lips. 3 months ago, I was begging them for an explanation through sobs. Today, they were in court, flustered and helpless. Power, finally, had shifted into my hands. My lawyer added, furthermore, the plaintiff has provided complete account records of the defendant's unauthorized transfer of marital assets, with a significant amount involved. According to relevant legal provisions, a party found to be at fault in a marriage shall be subject to restrictions in property division. I nodded quietly. My palms were slightly sweaty, yet I felt an unprecedented calm and clarity. This was the law. It was a weapon. It was a sharp sword they could no longer dismiss or refute. The judge spoke again, his tone stern, based on the existing evidence. The court preliminarily finds the defendant guilty of serious marital misconduct. Property division will be conducted according to legal statutes, prioritizing the plaintiff's legitimate interests. At that moment, my eyes welled up slightly, but no tears fell. I was no longer the woman squatting on the law steps, smoking and crying. I stood tall in the center of the courtroom, my voice firm. I believe in the law, and I believe in justice. My gaze swept over Daniel and Chloe. Their faces were an alternating mix of green and white, devoid of their former arrogance and defiance. Finally, they lowered their heads. When the gavel fell again, its dull thud echoed in the courtroom. In that moment, I knew the real turning point had begun. The latch clicked open with a clack, and a dusty scent wafted out. Inside were some leftover old items, early photos, casual notes, and a few pieces of jewelry. My finger inadvertently brushed against a small velvet box, an instinctual dread tightened my heart. I slowly opened it. It was a necklace, so familiar it made me instinctively hold my breath. The diamond pendant coldly reflected the fluorescent light, and I immediately recognized it. This was a gift Chloe had once given me. Back then, Shed insisted it was a token of friendship, and Daniel had laughed and explained for her. Chloe understands you best. Only women send such thoughtful gifts. I had actually believed him then. It even carefully put it away, thinking it was a token of our best friendship. Looking back now, it was utterly absurd. It was their unspoken code, a blatant provocation to me, a diamond-studded insult. My fingertips clutched the necklace tightly, its sharp edges digging painfully into my palm. Blood seeped out slowly, but I didn't let go. What surged in my chest wasn't sorrow, but a cold laugh. I stood up and walked directly to the desk. My hand fell on the long silent paper shredder, and the power indicator light instantly lit up. The low hum sounded like a beast's growl. I stared at the necklace in my hand, a sarcastic curve slowly forming on my lips. Worthless junk. Do you really deserve to grace my neck? Before the words were fully out, I abruptly tossed the necklace into the machine's opening. Gears churned, sparks flew, the crisp clang of metal exploded in the small space, and the diamond pendant struggled for a few seconds between the gears, ultimately being mercilessly crushed. Crunch crunch, the sound was like a complete severing of some kind of shackles. I quietly watched the debris slide out, scattering into the waste bag, like a pile of worthless fragments. Under the light, they no longer gleamed but were dull. Like dust, my heart too felt lighter with their destruction. The past doubts, humiliation, and compromises made while waiting for an explanation were all shattered, just like that necklace. I finally understood that the so-called friendship and marriage, in their mouths, were nothing but pretexts. True trust had long since died in a string of lies. I bent down, tied the waste bag securely, and carried it straight to the trash can. With a release of my wrist, the bag of dull fragments fell heavily. It felt like a farewell. A farewell to those murky years. A farewell to the submissive self. Outside, the wind howled, yet I felt an unprecedented peace. A voice slowly rose within me. Grace, you are no longer anyone's appendage. I turned, my back straight, my steps crisp and firm. The road ahead no longer held their shadows, only myself. Independent and clear-headed, the courtroom lights were dazzling, and the air was thick with a breathless tension. In the defendant's seat, Daniel, wearing a blue jail uniform from the detention center, looked much more haggard than I remembered. Shadows clung to his chin, and cold sweat beaded on his forehead. His eyes darted around, only revealing a trace of disbelieving panic when he looked at me. He probably hadn't expected me to go this far. The judge cleared his throat, signaling for the evidence to continue playing. Then, a low, hoarse voice came through the loudspeaker. "Grace, I truly made a mistake. Please, for the sake of all these years, don't pursue this any further, okay? I promise, I'll never do it again." That was a recording of Daniel secretly begging me to drop the lawsuit when he called me from the detention center. His voice was tearful, accompanied by background clanging noises, making him sound utterly pathetic. A low murmur ran through the courtroom gallery. Some shook their heads in regret, others sneered. Daniel was stripped of his facade, utterly disgraced. I watched him, a cool sense of satisfaction swelling in my heart. Years ago, when he smashed our wedding photo, he had coldly said, "This kind of thing is an eyesore." I still remembered the heartbreak of that moment. Now, he was finally tasting what it felt like to be trampled underfoot. I stood up, my voice clear and cutting. "Daniel, do you feel the pain now? When you smashed our wedding photo back then, why weren't you afraid of retribution?" The courtroom fell silent instantly. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Daniel looked up sharply, his face flushed crimson, his lips trembling as if to speak, but he choked on his own powerlessness. "You keep talking about repentance, but which specific act do you regret?" I articulated each word, striking at his core. "Do you regret your affair? Do you regret transferring assets? Or do you regret showering someone else with tenderness while I was pregnant?" As my words fell, Daniel visibly flinched. He lowered his head, his knuckles clenched tight, white at the joints. I watched the scene coldly, yet with an unexpected calm in my heart. The judge struck the gavel, his tone solemn. "The evidence is conclusive. This court will determine property ownership and fault responsibility according to relevant legal articles." Daniel's eyes suddenly darted in panic, as if he finally realized that everything was irreversible. I slowly let out a breath from my seat. This was my moment, no longer begging, no longer silent, but using the law, using evidence, using the weapons I personally wielded, to expose his lies before everyone. The trial concluded, and I turned to leave the courtroom. At the end of the corridor, sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, falling on my shoulders. In that instant, I felt the heavy burden lift from me. Daniel's voice still echoed in my ears. "Grace, I truly made a mistake, but I no longer trembled, no longer softened. Some mistakes, once made, were made. Some debts, sooner or later, had to be paid." Today, he finally paid the first installment, and I too, finally reclaimed my dignity. The sky was overcast, like a giant iron pot inverted over the city. The steps of the courthouse glistened coldly under the rain, and the air was filled with the damp smell of earth. When I received the divorce decree from the judge, the paper trembled slightly. Whether from the wind or my still tense fingertips, I couldn't tell. I looked down at the few cold lines of text: "Divorce granted, property awarded to the female party." A few brief words, yet they were like a heavy gavel strike, proclaiming the complete collapse of a long-standing bond. Something stirred in my chest, a pang of sorrow, a lightness, and a touch of belated emptiness. I opened my umbrella and walked out of the courthouse doors. Raindrops struck the umbrella fiercely, creating a dense whirring sound, as if someone were beating a drum endlessly in my ear. Pedestrians were scarce, everyone hurrying with their heads down, but I stopped at the entrance. Looking up, the rain blurred the entire world, a monochrome expanse, yet my heart was utterly clear. This day, I had waited for too long. I thought of that Valentine's Day. The anger and humiliation when I opened the gift box and saw the condom card. I thought of my name will no longer be a footnote to your infidelity. My voice was soft, yet it detonated in my heart like a clap of thunder. I had finally broken free from the web of his lies. The rain grew heavier, and the water flowed like small rivers on the roadside. I tightened my grip on the decree, tucking it into my document bag as if protecting some newborn vow. Passersby hurried past, splashing water onto my skirt, but I didn't recoil. I stood steadily, letting the chills soak into my ankles. The rain washed over the city, and it washed over me. No more questions, no more fear. Those nights that had kept me tossing and turning, that trampled dignity, those tears had bitten back, all were carried away by the rain today. I lifted my head, letting the drops sliding off the umbrella splash onto my cheeks, mingling with a hint of tears. Though I couldn't distinguish between rain and sorrow, my heart suddenly felt as light as a feather. This lightness belonged not to Daniel, not to Chloe, but only to myself. The courthouse bell chimed in the distance, low yet prolonged. I closed my umbrella, turned, and walked forward. In the rain, my silhouette stretched long, but my steps were steady, each one a deliberate farewell to my past self. The streetlights at the corner gradually flickered on, piercing through the rain, reflecting countless dancing specks of light on the ground. The light was no longer harsh, but gentle. I knew my new life was beginning at this very moment. My new apartment at night was quiet and spacious. The living room lights were soft, and the potted plant in the corner still carried the fresh scent of its recent purchase. The floor had just been mopped, leaving a faint woody aroma. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights spread out like a dazzling star chart, dense and glittering. I walked barefoot to the window, a slender champagne flute in my hand. The golden liquid shimmered gently within the crystal glass, reflecting my serene face. This was my first day in this apartment. No one accompanied me, and there was no specially prepared party, only myself. Yet, in this moment, I felt more at peace than ever before. Looking back, my path had been arduous yet resolute. The tremors of Valentine's Day night, the humiliation in the office corridor, the terror of my assets being stripped, the tears outside the law, the counter-attack in court, the shattering of old mementos, the revelation of the recording, the finality etched on the divorce decree. Each scene was like a deep scar etched into my memory, but these scars didn't break me. Instead, they became my armor. I understood, a woman's worth should never be dependent on anyone else. What I truly needed to protect was not the title of wife, nor a respectable marriage, but the soul willing to stand up for itself. I raised my champagne flute and lightly tapped it against the air. The clear clinking sound echoed in the empty room, creating a solemn sense of ritual. This glass, I whispered, my gaze passing through the liquid to the city lights, is a toast to all women who have been trampled into the mud, yet still managed to bloom. Though my voice was soft, it seemed to carry a certain power. Cutting through the post-rain night sky, I drank the wine. The cold bubbles burst on my tongue, a delicate mix of tartness and sweetness. Much like my journey, I had experienced bitterness and pain, but ultimately, a rich, mellow sweetness remained. My phone vibrated on the coffee table. A few messages popped up. My best friend texted, "Grace, you finally won. I'm so proud of you." A colleague's congratulations followed. "Once we partner to open a law, no one will dare to underestimate you." There was even a message from an unknown female reader, commenting on an article I'd written anonymously. "Thank you for showing me courage." I looked at these words, my eyes welling up, but I couldn't help but smile. It turned out I wasn't fighting alone. My struggles and awakening were quietly spreading strength. The night breeze gently stirred the curtains, lifting a corner as if applauding me. I gently placed the empty glass on the table, took a deep breath, and turned to embrace my new life. Everything here was chosen by me. No lies, no betrayal, only my true self, and a clear future. And that glass of champagne was not just a farewell to the past, but a blessing for the future. That's all for today's story. Thank you for listening. This is my channel. The tales I share drawn from life or woven from imagination are meant to offer you connection, reflection, and perhaps solace or newfound strength. If you long to see your own reflection in others' journeys, or seek a glimmer of light within the maze of emotions, subscribe to my channel. Listen with your heart. Explore the stories of life.